And we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to the Map Round Show. Today, I am joined live from the United States with an incredible woman that's awe-inspiring, and I cannot wait for you to get to know her and really kind of digest her story, which is truly remarkable. Her name is Jessica Cox. Welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to be on.
Rent-A-Crowd is sparse because of this coronavirus thing, so I do apologize for the skeleton crew on site today. But Jess, for our viewers and listeners out there who potentially haven't heard anything about you at all, why don't you set this episode up for us?
Okay, well, as you can see, I have missing that most people probably, and that's both of my arms. And I was born this way. So since day one, I haven't known any different from what it is that I'm living now. It's basically a congenital situation where I was born. No reason why I was born without arms. It just happened, a fluke thing, maybe something environmental that affected me during basically was while my mom was pregnant with me, but there's no real reason. But my parents really created this strong foundation. They really brought me up to believe that I could do anything, and they really helped me make sure that I had a good attitude about life. And here I am now, many years later, and have done so much more than probably the average person because I've been blessed with opportunities. One probably thing that most people know me as is the armless pilot. So I've flown an airplane. I fly an airplane and am certified to fly an airplane with just my feet on the controls.
That's nuts. And I was actually watching a video, a CNN clip of you on your Twitter page. It's truly remarkable when I don't think people fully appreciate what you've overcome and what you've achieved. I think it's a Guinness Book of World Records. You've certainly put, your inspirational story on the world stage. You do a lot of speaking about your story, and I suppose that's what I kind of leading into my next question, which is what's your message here to people who come across your story, and let's say you're speaking on a stage in Singapore or wherever, like what are you trying to get across to people?
I really try to help people understand that the way we think about challenges will affect our accomplishments. And I call it possible thinking. It's really about approaching any kind of challenge, any kind of obstacle with a positive mentality. And I challenge people to believe that they can achieve the impossible with possible thinking.
Mm-hmm. So unpack that for us, because a lot of people, let's just take this coronavirus story, which is everywhere right now. If you think about the challenge that a lot of people have, a lot of people are suffering, a lot of people are in pain, a lot of people are fearful about the future. And this is a very big deal when it comes to the average person. How does is it positive thinking? Is that what you said? Possible thinking. Sorry. I'm corrected. Thank you very much, Jessica. It is your IP, of course. So possible thinking. How does that practically translate in your world?
It starts with thinking outside the shoe. And the reason I say that is because most people know the saying, think outside the box. Mm-hmm. And thinking outside the shoe is my own personal spin on think outside the box. It's about really approaching a challenge, because too often we are limited or we are confined by our shoes. And what I mean by that is shoe, SHOE, stands for self-limiting beliefs, H, habits, O, overcomplication, and E, excuses. Mm-hmm. And too often we just allow those to rule our lives, and it holds us back from our true potential. But once we're able to think outside the shoe, if we're able to break free of all those things, we can actually achieve the impossible.
I love that. I'm stealing it. I'm using it. I'm going to be your shoe reseller here. Think outside the shoe reseller. Brand advocates. But this is what you're saying.
You.
I love those elements though. I really do. So let's start with the S. So self-limiting beliefs. So you obviously born with no arms. The basic things that, and I'm obviously, future pacing, trying to put myself in your shoe, in your shoes. But it's like, you're born with no arms, and like the basic thing that I would take for granted. So here's a nice cup of water. So I'm going to now take a sip of this. You don't get to do that. And your entire life, you've never had that opportunity, right? So you've had to, I deal with this idea of self-limiting things, or self-limiting beliefs, self-limiting, ideas about what you can and can't do and what's possible for you and what's not possible for you. And we all have that. We all have self-limiting beliefs. What we don't do is interrogate them. What we don't do is become aware of them. What we don't do is we don't self-actualize around this idea of self-limiting beliefs. So can you walk us through, in your experience, where does one start to self-actualize and overcome the idea of self-limiting beliefs about, attainment of something?
Well, unfortunately, for people who may have a disability or something different, we have just an excessive amount of negativity put on us. The average person gets 180,000 negative imprints by the time they're age 18. So if you can imagine someone without arms, I was constantly being told, you can't do this, you can't do that. So the moment I turn that label into a belief that I can't do it, then that's when it becomes a negative thing. And for me, like you were talking about that glass, when I saw you drink the glass even before we went on live, I was just thinking I should have grabbed my coffee cup from the other room, because I use a coffee cup with a handle and I'm able to sip my coffee and drink anything I want to drink with my foot. Or if I had to grab a straw out of the cabinet, I'd be right back and drinking as well. So it's not about looking at what you can't do or focusing on the things that are negative. It's really looking at the things that you can do.
Amazing stuff. So just on the H piece, what is the H again?
H is habits.
Habits. Okay. So what are some of the positive reinforcing habits that you've applied in your life? And when you walk us through, should someone, be applying this shoe process, walk us through, how does one deal with and reinforce positive habits in our lives?
Okay, well, I do use the acronym THINK, and THINK is definitely the way that we are able to overcome the shoe. And so that's T, tear up the challenge; H, heighten awareness; I, insist on finding a way; N, nonstop reevaluation, repurposing, or if you have to, reinvent; and K is for kick out the habit of excuses. So really, I think habits develop in our lives where we think there's only one way to do something, but it's really being able to step outside of the way everything is done and finding your own creative way and using the THINK acronym to get through a challenge or get through an obstacle.
You know what I find interesting? I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my 2-year-old is always walking around the house, and I'm very aware of the number of times I say no to her. So don't do that. Don't touch that. Put that down. And you know what I'm saying? So by the time the child's like 14 years old, she's probably heard the word no and don't do this, like that negative reinforcement, because this is about the behavior, right? And I'm trying to get to like, where do we learn these things? And in the same way as you described, like you were born in their arms and then suddenly like, no, you can't drink, you can't do this, you can't do that. And so, and regardless of whether you've got arms or not, the point that I'm trying to make here is that we learn these things from when we're very, very young, and it's well intentioned, right? When I say, Reagan, don't touch that hot oven, or don't touch the knife, or don't touch the kettle, or don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Over time, you subconsciously learn that that risk is bad, or failure is bad, or that I shouldn't do the things, I shouldn't take the risk, and I shouldn't be myself, because kids, in my view, they take massive action all the time. It's like they don't stop, right? And so because they take massive action, and action being a huge thing, right, in terms of goal attainment and success, like you've taken massive action to become the world's first like armless pilot. You understand what I mean? And so, but when you're younger, it's like your parents are like, they're trying to protect you and they're trying to love you. But unfortunately, you learn these things subconsciously. And so when you get older, you don't want to take the massive action. You don't want to take the risk, because subconsciously, that it's bad. And that if I take a massive action, that there's going to be a negative consequence as a result. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me this. How does one uncover that sort of negative behavioral constraint? Does that make sense? So how do we uncover that, and then how do we break through?
Well, I think over time that also can develop into a fear, or like you said, we're afraid to do something because we don't want to experience failure, or we think maybe that, something's going to happen. And I always say the way to overcome that is to use fearlessness, because courage and doing something despite being afraid of it brings you this kind of new level of empowerment, when you do something despite all that self-talk or negativity or fear that you have, that you built up over something, but you do something anyways, and you're able to break through and say, I'm not really confined to that. I can go beyond all that. And I think one example for me I remember was when I went out to do my first open mic night at a comedy club. And I was getting ready to do this for the first time. I put my name down on the list. Anyone could put their name down on the list. You just kind of wait there until your turn. And as I was waiting there, I kept having this talk in my head about, you can leave now. You can slip out the door. No one's going to know that you just ditched your opportunity. And I had all this self-talk as to why I shouldn't go up there and take the risk of not being laughed at, or being laughed at and not getting the response that I wanted, or being humiliated. And I had all these things going through my head. And I was like, wow, that's something that every one of us faces when it comes to any kind of challenge or opportunity. We're always having that kind of self-doubt. We're experiencing a lot of ways of having excuses to not do something. And then once we do something that we're afraid of, and we just have a little one step towards that thing that we're afraid of, it just opens up this world of, wow, I did it anyway. And that's what I think is important, is to be able to have the courage to be fearless about doing something.
Yeah, it's hard to cultivate that, right?
It is, but it comes just like, like any muscle, is just practice. If you can get out there and do things that you're afraid of, and that's why I love to do things that scare me at times, because then you start getting stronger and it becomes easier for you.
Like Dorothy, right, in the Yellow Brick Road. Is the lion the one that lacks the fear? Or the courage? Which one is it? Is
a lion.
Is the lion, eh? Yeah. So don't be like the lion, basically. Be like the real lion. Don't be a sheep.
Yeah.
So go back to your SHOE acronym, the O. Walk us through that.
Overcomplication is something we often do when we're looking at something, whether it's a big, intimidating challenge or goal. Take, for example, when I first thought about flying an airplane, I could have easily been overcome by that complicated concept of, I'm having to fly an airplane in the sky, lose contact with the ground, which was one of my fears, and maneuver this airplane without any arms and hands, and doing this all with my feet. And I think that we tend to psych ourselves out when it comes to something that might be intimidating. We overcomplicate it. We say, well, there's just too much going on. I don't know if I can physically do that. And when we overcomplicate it and we blow it up in our heads, then we end up basically taking a step back from that challenge that we may have taken on otherwise.
That's such a huge point, especially in the entrepreneurial space, right? It's like if you're thinking about starting a business, you'll think about every reason why it needs to be perfect before you start.
Yes, exactly.
It's like I'm really enjoying the idea of these big things. Like I'm doing a sort of a 300-mile mountain bike race. Well, I was, but not anymore now, thanks to all these events being cancelled. But if you think about these massive events and guys who run ultra marathons and guys that swim around the UK, like Ross Edgley, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a fascinating guy. You'd love to get into his story. He's also got a great podcast. But the idea is that, when you think about attaining something, your mind immediately thinks about all the steps required in order to get there. So in your case, it's like, well, I'm going to fly a plane. It's like, holy shit, I have never flown a plane. I'm going to actually leave the ground. If this doesn't work out for me, the consequences are going to be quite severe. There's no ejector seat. You know what I mean? And so when you think about that and the dials, the instruments, and understanding how to fly in the environment and the rules of the road and all this kind of stuff, it's completely overwhelming, So how did you tackle that? Like, where did you start? Was there like a philosophy that you adopted? Like, how did you unpack the problem and then execute through it?
Well, it started with one step at a time. It really was about breaking it down, which I have this way of, the moment I see a challenge or an obstacle, I immediately break it down into achievable steps. And that's what I encourage other people to do. Is maybe it seems like a big, intimidating thing at first, but if you break it down into the things you can do and using that approach, think outside the shoe. I use that example when I first learned to tie my shoelaces as a kid. I looked around, I saw everyone, they had their foot inside the shoe, but I had to keep my feet out of the shoe because I use my toes to tie the laces like everyone uses their hands. And I ended up thinking and realizing, okay, I'll break this down. First, I need my foot out of the shoe so that I can use my toes, grab the laces, watch my teacher. She demonstrates how to tie that into a bow, one little step at a time. And it's just breaking it down into steps. And that overcomplicated task that people might think it'd be hard to do with your toes, tie your own shoelaces. Well, it is achievable if you break it down.
That's crazy, man. What is a little known thing that you do with your feet that no one else knows about?
Well,
Can be big or small. I mean, the big stuff's kind of ticked already, right? You can fly a plane and drive a car. So,
the small things. I mean, I do everyday things. Like I can sew something with my toes, and that's, obviously holding the needle is. I can do that. I can do the basics of sewing. I've been able to do, like, for example, like I type on a keyboard with my toes. I have my home keys of the keyboard memorized, or a text message with my toes. I just do just about anything. So like when you ask that question, I don't even think anything is like extraordinary for me because I just do everything that everyone does with their fingers.
It's remarkable that, right? Is that you don't think it's remarkable yet. That, like, I know that that's remarkable.
It's my norm. So.
Isn't it crazy? How does that make you feel? When people... when people like say that kind of thing to you, like, you are remarkable. You are remarkable.
I have to probably really sit back and think about it from their perspective. It is remarkable for someone who has never met anyone without arms, who's been able to do everything with their toes and feet. And I have to recognize that my norm might be remarkable for other people, which is the whole genesis and the reason why I decided to go on stage and share my life with thousands of people, with the hopes of helping them overcome their own limitations by seeing something that might seem remarkable to them, but for me is my norm.
It's it is remarkable. I'm just going to leave that there. So the final letter, this E, I want to kind of close that off because it's kind of core to your story. The E, walk us through the final one.
So E is excuses. And every single day, we could either live a life full of excuses or we could just break through them. And I think everyone faces an excuse, whether it's, am I going to go out and exercise this morning? Well, I guess I don't have to, or other reasons of, I need to limit what I'm doing today, or whatever it is. We can always come up with excuses for anything we want to do in life. And that's just pretty much a given. I think everyone has the opportunity to allow an excuse to stand in the way of any opportunity.
So much to say here. First thing is, I want to ask you though, where do you find you're making excuses?
Well, honestly, because I'm human, I think I brought up the whole fitness thing because I have been preparing now for a cycle race, and I went out yesterday morning, and even though it was raining, and I wanted to minimize my outdoors activities because it is recommended just to minimize your outdoors activities and mainly do stay in indoors. But out here where it's pretty vast, it's pretty open, it's okay to take your bike out because you don't encounter many people. And I took out my bike in the rain yesterday, and I was like, that's always a challenge of having to motivate myself every morning or every other morning at least to take my bike out and to go out by myself without anyone telling me, to go out and ride for a couple miles so that I can get prepared and trained for this upcoming race.
Yeah, it's nuts. So this whole idea of excuses is an interesting one. Like with the coronavirus, I've got about 30 staff and they're all now working from home. And as a result of that, a lot of people are having to set up more meetings to figure out what to do, make decisions, and reach alignment on certain deliverables, right? So I got one guy today who's like, I've spent 4.5 hours on video conferences. I've got no work done. And then we had a whole group forum today, and everyone was complaining about this. It was like, This is ridiculous. There's too much structure. There's too much time wastage. We're not productive. Da 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 da. And the reality is that is an excuse, again, not to deliver, right? And so it's like whenever it gets too hard, I call it friction. So whenever the friction goes from like a 3 to a 9, and the 9 is when you go, hang on a second, this isn't what I signed up for. It's too hard. It doesn't meet my expectations. And so what you want to do is you want to retreat. You make up the excuse, but actually you're just retreating from the battlefield because the battlefield's too real for you. It's too hard for you. It's not what you signed up for. It's not, the full box of chocolates and the roses. And when it's not perfect, it's not good enough for me, and so for me, it's like I love this quote. I don't know who said it, but it was kind of like, it goes like this: the only thing that stops you from getting what you want is the story you keep telling yourself about why you can't have it. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, right?
True.
But it is true, right? We make up these
Yes.
narratives. It's like Christ, and that's why I love your story, because it's like there is no excuse. Like when Jessica Cox stands up in front of you and says, "I've achieved all these things. I've done all these things, despite my situation." Right? I don't want to use the word disability because I know you don't view it as one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you see that there is no excuse for you not to be successful, to not have the things that you want, it's your duty, it's your obligation, and it's your responsibility to get there. It is. And and for me, it's the only time you don't get there is when you don't treat it as your duty, your obligation, and your responsibility. You're just not going to get there, because the moment that's when the little cracks in your dream start to appear. The image goes from beautiful colors to black and white, and then suddenly the excuses start to come through, and it's like, well, the market wasn't ready, or it was, whatever the excuse is, right? So are you feeling me right now, right? So the thing I wanted to get into with you is, what's your words of advice to someone that's making excuses, who potentially is expecting things from life when actually they should be asking, what can life expect from me? What is your words of advice to that person?
I say for that person to have a very clear goal. As you mentioned, it's not a muddled goal, it's a very clear goal. Commit to that goal and visualize what it would be like to achieve that, and work hard without excuses towards that goal. Keeping it in mind every single time you do something and you feel like maybe backing down or faltering in whatever it is you need to do to get to that goal. But making it so real, so true to you personally, that it is already real. It's just a matter of getting there. And then that'll help you, motivate you to get closer and closer to that goal. And you'd be surprised how huge that visualization can help you, with hard work, of course.
Yeah. Talk us through your visualization process. I mean, do you write down, your goal before, and in other words, I'm going to be here, that you do, timestamp it. You go, okay, cool. I'm here in the plane. It's this kind of plane. It's got a red stripe. It's got white, mainly. I'm sitting in the cockpit with leather chairs. They're gray. Like, walk us through how you become clear, like super crystal clear about your goal. How do you do that?
Okay, I'm going to talk about a past goal because that's probably easier to talk about because it did happen. And it was 2 years into my flight training. It was at a point when I felt like everyone had maybe given up on this possibility of me becoming a pilot. I'd already gone through 2 different instructors. I'd gone through 2 different airplanes, many hours of sitting behind the controls. And it was just getting further and further away from this goal, because I was basically at a spot where logistically everything wasn't coming together to make it work for me. And finally, I just remembered feeling like I still had the fire burning in me, that I wanted to become this pilot, despite all the doubts and everything we'd gone through in the previous 2 years. And I pulled up a picture of an airplane, and it was the type of airplane that I needed to fly. And I put that picture on the backdrop of my computer, so that every morning I'd spend just a couple seconds envisioning what it was like, as I mentioned, knowing what it would feel like, knowing all the details of what it would be like to be in that plane, just for a few seconds every day. And surprisingly, and not surprisingly, I should say, that within probably a month of that visualization, the next third and final airplane that I needed to continue my journey to become a pilot became available.
Huh.
The owner of that airplane was also an instructor. And it just worked out so well. It just like went smoothly from that point on. I was in his plane the next day after meeting him. And in that airplane, I continued on my training until I was a certified pilot. So that for me was an example of envisioning something that maybe people doubted was possible. But for me, it was very real.
Yeah, I'm sure. And of course it happened, right? So it became more than just a vision. It was actually, I'm actually living my dream right now, right? I think a lot of people don't actually spend a lot of time visualizing. I know I'm probably guilty of that. And I also make excuses about why I don't spend enough time, you know what I mean? Visualizing my outcome. Like, I haven't visualized this business in the context of coronavirus. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how does one even begin to, deal with that kind of thing? I will say though, I went through a big kind of spiritual phase when I was much younger, about 14 years ago. 14 now, I'm 26 at the time. I went to Monaco for like a 2-week seminar, and I learned a lot about philosophy and this kind of thing as it relates to goal attainment. And I learned about NLP and neuro-linguistic programming, and how you actually go about putting together a concrete goal. In other words, so that it tricks your unconscious mind into believing that it will happen. And the idea being is that when something is, it's like a limiting belief. If you believe that you cannot do something, you will not do it. It's fact, right? So the idea then is, well, what if you could program your unconscious mind with a goal so that it doesn't know if it's true or not? And so, because the mind doesn't care if it's true or not. It just believes that it's true. And so therefore, because it believes it's true, you will then take the appropriate actions in order to get the thing that you want. So the idea is that you, in NLP or neuro-linguistic program, you've got different kind of modalities in the mind: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and various others. But you want to work with the main one. So it's sight, audio, and feeling. So you write down all the things you see in great detail. You write down the things you hear, like you'd hear the propeller plane, turning over its engines, and then you would, like olfactory, you'd be writing around, the smell of the diesel or whatever the case is, and then you would feel the feeling of lifting the ground or lifting off the ground, the elation of landing perfectly and this kind of thing. And you write that all down, and then what you do is you then relax and you visualize that through a process of just literally relaxation and kind of like meditation, or starting with meditation, then leaning into the vision fully. So really feeling the feeling of lifting the ground, like really, really feeling and hearing the sounds and of the engine and all this kind of thing. And when you get into it, you feel incredible. Like you really feel like you've done the thing that you said you had, that you haven't done yet, but you can feel it in your body. It's quite a powerful thing. And it's a great technique. I don't do it enough because my excuse is I'm too busy, quote unquote. But I would highly recommend that people do that. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and get into kind of like, what are you doing now and moving forward? You've got a foundation. I really want to get into the foundation that you've founded and what's kind of next for you. Walk us through, what's the foundation called, and what is it doing? What is it looking to achieve, and that kind of thing?
I have the foundation that I'm very proud of. It's called Right Footed Foundation International because I am right foot dominant. And it also is a dual meaning. Right footed is getting people on the right foot and helping them push through whatever challenges that they have. And for me, the foundation is going to serve to help people with disabilities with a special emphasis on amputees. And I'm just getting started right now. It's very new and it's very exciting because we were donated an airplane just last year. And I'm getting current in this airplane, making sure that I feel safe flying it and that I would be a very good pilot for flying up passengers who happen to have differences or disabilities or challenges or obstacles. And I will be flying them in this plane to give them a boost, to encourage them, as well as get the message out there that our nonprofit has, that disability doesn't mean inability, that we are able. And we're going to get that message out there through this airplane and flying up different passengers. It's exciting. It's an exciting time right now.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us more about the plane. Like, how big is it? How many people can fit inside? Walk us through. What is that?
Okay, the airplane, it's the same airplane I trained in. It's a two-seater airplane. So I would be taking one passenger at a time. But what's unique about this plane is that it is the only airplane that doesn't have rudder pedals. And I know that doesn't mean much to other people who don't know how airplanes fly exactly. But what's also cool is that you can have the windows down and it's like flying a convertible in the sky. So if you imagine the windows are down, you're sitting in there beside me, all this wind, and you can actually stretch your arm out, stretch your foot out or whatever and feel the air without anything in the way. So it's like a convertible in the sky. And that's that's the most exciting thing right now is getting people that experience, empowering them through flight.
What makes that excite? Like, I know, like I was going to say, when are you flying a 747?
The 747, just to clarify, is not, that's beyond my certification.
Come on. Come on. You know you can do it. You know you
yeah,
can do it.
I know.
Right?
It's right now. You're right. Yeah. It's right now my certification is called Sport Pilot. And we'll see, what that goal will be if that is my goal to get a 747 rating. But right now it's really exciting flying this small plane. It's a nice little plane not too far from where I live. So I'm able to just hop in a car, drive over there and get the airplane ready and take it up like I'm going to do this afternoon.
Really? Amazing. What time is it there now?
It's about almost lunchtime around here right now.
Really? Eh? Jeez, imagine that. Just hop on over to your private runway and off you get into your plane. Boom. Amazing. So tell me more about the foundation. So the idea is that you're going to, who's going to be in the plane? Like who's your kind of core, like key focus there? Is it people with disabilities or people who just in general?
It will be people with disabilities, and especially amputees. So people who were either born without limbs or people who've lost limbs from something traumatic or something medical. And our foundation serves to mentor many different amputees. It also serves to advocate for the message of, we are able, that we can achieve great things. And it also educates the general population that, we're just as human as anyone else. And of course, overall, it inspires. So there's the 4 facets of the foundation to mentor, educate, advocate, and inspire. And we're trying to work that every time we do something.
Amazing. Have you heard of a young lady called Tilly Lockie?
Why does that sound familiar? I feel like I've heard the name.
I'm surprised you. Okay, maybe I'm gonna. So maybe it'll ring a bell. But basically, she also doesn't have arms. But not but not like where you literally don't have any arms. Like she had, I don't know what, I can't. My team's trying to get her on the show as well. There's a weird pattern happening here, guys. But anyway, but she's a young girl. She's in her teens, and I think she it was like from her elbows or something like that. Anyway, but she was in a movie recently, but she's become almost world famous because she's British, I believe, and this British robotics company heard her story and obviously were very empathetic about it. Said, "Hey, we're developing, these robotic kind of limbs or whatever." And so what they did was they developed a pair specifically for her. Flew her to it was great PR strategy, by the way. And they said, "Listen, here's a box," and they presented it to her, and they opened it and said, "They're your arms." And so what it does is it basically connects to her upper body and her limbs, and then she's able to use them literally like arms. I don't understand the underlying technology. That's hence why love to get her on the show. But in essence, what she was given was the gift of arms when she didn't have any. Does that ring a bell?
I think I may have seen her. Yes. Is she a young mom too? Is she mom or no? She's teenager?
No, she's young still, I think. She's very young for it. But these British kids these days, Jess.
No, I think I'm thinking of someone else. But that's amazing. I'm gonna look her up once we're off the show.
Yeah.
I wonder how she responded to those robotic arms.
The media's got a hold of this. I don't understand the media. I just know that it's a very powerful thing. Hashtag COVID-19. But it's fascinating the technology that is now available, and what it can do. in terms of giving people gifts that, to your point, and in your exact experience, you were born this way. It wasn't a car accident. It wasn't something that happened to you. It was just how it was. This is the gift. It's just your deck of cards, right? So, what is your view on technology as it relates to people with disabilities, like Tilly Lockie and millions of other people around the world? What is your hope around technology?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. And I definitely don't want to, crush anyone's hopes or anything, because everyone has a different opinion. Now, I have a personal opinion about what prosthetics are like for me because I wore them for 11 years. And I think technology has definitely come a long way since I wore those prosthetics for 11 years. And I'm definitely encouraging, especially for people who have lost a limb. Maybe they lived their whole life with all 4 limbs and all of a sudden something happens. It's devastating. And then to know that robotics can come in and replace that, that's an incredible hope that I wouldn't want to take away from anyone. But I will tell you, my personal opinion is, even if I had the most powerful robotic arms that could even do things that regular flesh and bone arms couldn't do, even if I had that option, I wouldn't want them.
Why though?
And that's because I know why not use technology, because this is my norm. And if I were to all of a sudden be presented with something like new arms, it would be like starting over again. And it would be just like if you were to be born or to wake up tomorrow with another set of arms. It was that whole relearning process. Now, I understand some of these robotics can connect to your nerves or to your brain waves or something, where I don't know the details, but they're phenomenal how far they've come with them. But for me, I mean, I used prosthetics from the age of 3 to the age of 14. And I wore them to school every single day. And it was like learning how to play an instrument or something. I was having to learn how to use them, how to move the elbow up, how to open up the hand portion so that I could put a fork in there, put a spoon or a pencil in there. And it took more energy and more time than if I just picked up that pencil between my toes and wrote my name down on the piece of paper. So it's hard for me to explain that I'm more efficient and faster and prefer my feet than prosthetics.
See, that's
fascinating. But I was born this way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's fascinating for me, right? Because I suppose, well, you see, I don't know. I'm trying to get my head around that. So the thing is, with you, it's all you've ever known is the use of your feet, and then because of pressure to be normal, quote unquote, and to fit in or whatever. It's like, well, you try this because this way your life will be easier. That was what society was dictating to you, right? And then you know that your truth is very different to that. You're like, okay, fine, I'm going to play around with this thing, and this is actually painful for me. It's not my struggle. I've been like, your struggle was no arms from birth. That was your struggle. Now people were trying to retrofit that struggle into a space that, quite frankly, wasn't your authentic one. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then the other side of that is, in my case, to your point, if I woke up tomorrow and I didn't have arms, the first thing I would want to do is gravitate back to that, because that would be my frame of reference, right? And in Tilly Lockie's case, it was like, well, I wonder if I must actually find out. But anyway, regardless, she now has this technology that enables her to, quote, live normally, right? And I suppose where I want to go with that now is to say to you, what if it was easier? What if technology, how old are you now, Jess, if I may ask?
I'm 37.
Okay, so you're 37 now. So it's been, what is that, 14? So for 13, was that there? Is that right? 13 years?
13 years, yeah.
So 13 years, right? As technology's advanced a shitload. Okay. And so what if they could attach an arm to you, right? That was into your nervous system, so that it wasn't like, well, no, I've got to kind of, you know what I mean? Like the way that you described, it was like, well, I have to open up the hand, I've got to do this thing, or whatever. And it was much easier, and you could control it literally with your mind, unconsciously. And it felt like a natural extension. Well, I say natural now, and quote unquote, right? What is natural to you? But if it felt more natural, let's just say it that way, it was like 90% or 80% natural to you, would you use it?
I'm, I know that I've done a test before that shows that my brain has the mapping for the arms and hands. So the brain mapping is there. If that were the case, it would be very possible for my body to adapt to something new. I'm still hesitant because I feel like my unique circumstances and my unique life has given me almost like an opportunity in a way that if I even had, I mean, obviously, if I had these new amazing arms, I would have a new platform to speak on. I mean, people would be fascinated by technology's way of transforming my life. But I feel like my being who I am has an even stronger message. And when I'm able to say, I wouldn't want the arms even if I was given the option, I think that that makes a huge statement to people around the world when I share that on stage.
Hmm. I suppose it raises the question, like, the saying, like, well, I was born to be an entrepreneur. That you said. So I get asked all the time, like, so talk to me about entrepreneurship, Matt. Is someone born an entrepreneur, or do they become an entrepreneur? And then my thing is, well, you decide what you want to be. It's like, yes, you get people who naturally gravitate towards entrepreneurial thinking, like your kind of thinking, right? And then you get those that don't, right? They just take longer because of whatever reason. But ultimately, you decide, and it's got nothing to do with your how you were born. Were you born to be an athlete? Were you born to be, like a Formula One racing? Were you born to be Ellen? Were you born to be Oprah? Like, you understand? Have you heard of those kind of narratives before? I mean, do you believe that you are born to be something?
I think so. Yes, I think I was born to be the way I am, and it has a real purpose. I mean, I still don't know the full purpose yet. It's definitely unfolding and still being used. But if I can go through and have an everyday encounter with someone, maybe even just like yesterday, I went through the drive-through at a restaurant, and the woman there who handed me my food through the window as I drove up, she was saying that how inspiring it was that I was there. She had a child who had a disability, who had Down syndrome, and just our little encounter in that few seconds that morning helped her feel like she can help her daughter overcome her own challenges. So I feel like every day is an opportunity for an encounter to help someone, to give them hope, to inspire someone. And I don't know if I was quote the normal, if there is a normal, and had say arms or whatever, I feel like I wouldn't have the same kind of impact.
See, my thing around purpose is that, people always say, no, no. When you were young, did your peer group, did they ever tell you, hey, Jess, one day you'll find your purpose? Did they ever say that to you?
No, I
Did they
don't
not?
remember.
Really? Jeez, you're an
No, no.
outlier. Where are you in the States exactly? I'm moving there. All I know is it's 15 hours drive from Austin. I'm coming.
Okay.
But okay. In my experience and in many, many others, especially here, maybe it's not an American thing, but people like, when you're young and you're 18, you kind of you don't know jack shit, and you're trying to figure it all out, right? And so people, they say to you, no, one day you'll find your purpose. And you're like, damn, my dad actually told me that. He was like, well, Matt, don't worry, buddy. Like, one day you're going to find your purpose. And that caused me endless sleepless nights, because I was like, how do I find it? Why haven't I found it yet? I mean, it's not a set of fucking car keys, your purpose. Do you know what I mean? It's not lying around somewhere for you to discover. And so and it took me a long time and a lot of self-reflection to figure out that you never find it. It's not something you find. It's something you create. And so, yes, you were born into a certain set of circumstances, but you didn't find your purpose, right? You created it. You chose to say that my life will mean something. I will matter despite my situation. And I will inspire people. And you've now done all these things. I mean, there's a whole crazy list of stuff that you've done. One of those things we touched on being the plane. But you decided that you would matter, and then you went about creating it. You didn't find it. Do you understand? And I think it's a huge mindset shift that people need to make. What are your views on that?
I love that. And I think I probably should think more about that and how I can apply that to the people I speak to, because it's really like a difference of being passive or active towards whatever it is you're trying to, achieve. And I think that's a phenomenal question. I'll have to think more about that. I love it though.
Okay, well, you're going to have to come back. We're going to do a Jessica Cox segment on the show
Yes.
about purpose.
Great.
Update. Cool. So you've been on Ellen, you've been on Oprah. What is Oprah and Ellen like? What's it like to meet them?
Well, actually, I was on Oprah Winfrey Network, so I didn't have the chance to meet Oprah, but I did meet her team that came out. And Ellen, she was amazing. And being on her show, I think was the most incredible experience. She treats her guests really nice backstage. We had this. It was a special experience to be backstage and then go on the set with her. And after the cameras were rolling, I had a couple seconds to spend some time with her without her being on camera. And that was very special. But to meet her, it was like, she's very transparent. She's the same person you see on TV. She's very kind and very sweet. And I mean, I would say she's the closest person to what you see on TV as anyone I've met. Mm-hmm. It was incredible to meet her. She's very generous.
But me as well, right? I mean, I'm pretty close, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
Yes. Matt Brown's show competes with Ellen. But only in the transparency stakes, not in audience reach at all, okay? So walk us through the actual experience of being on the show, though. I've had one chap before. He's quite famous locally. He was on the Oprah Winfrey show. He performed live. He's a musician. But what does a show like that do to a personal brand like Jessica Cox? What does it do for you?
Well, for one, I had no idea. I mean, this has nothing to do. Well, I guess it does have to do with my brand. It's that when after the show, right while the cameras were still rolling, she said, since you've been doing all the flying, we're going to fly you and your entire family to Hawaii for 7 days and 6 nights at in Maui, Hawaii. And I was, of course, stunned at that because I had no idea that was coming. But what that did for me was it brought me to Hawaii and I learned how to surf. So that transformed my brand even better. Is that it helped me connect with people who are surfers, and that brand that, hey, you can surf without arms. That helped me out a lot. Yes.
But that's exactly what I was talking about, right? You were presented with an opportunity and then you created something meaningful from that for you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
Many people would just like, what's that clip on the Oprah Winfrey show? It's like, you get one, no, you get one, no, you get one. And it's like, the audience like, yeah, oh my God. And they scream and they go crazy. Like, yeah, I'm getting a car. Or like whatever it is, and it's like, but you were also given something, right? But then what made you different and what I believe makes you unique and special, and really what undercovers this entire podcast for me, is the fact that while you were given the gift, you made the most of it. Do you know what I mean? Like you made the most of that because like you don't get to have the opportunity to go surfing. Like many people will go on holiday to like Thailand and Bali and Australia and these places, and they got amazing surfing, even South Africa, like Jeffreys Bay or whatever. And they'll go there on holiday and they won't even get in the water. Right? There you are with no arms hopping up on a surfboard, which, by the way, there's no rule book for. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to teach yourself that. Where does that spark come from within you?
It's just this zest for wanting to do something new, for that sense of accomplishment when you are able to achieve it. Regardless of who I am, the fact that I don't have arms, I think a part of just my personality is that I like to go out and do new things. I cannot stand doing the same thing over. I'm spontaneous, and my spontaneity is just, something that comes with me, and something I probably got part of it from my mom because she was a spontaneous person. But when I have an opportunity, I want to take this to a new level of attempting it and succeeding with it, because after that, you have this kind of empowerment that comes with accomplishment. And I think it's just chasing each new challenge so that you can get that kind of adrenaline junkie kind of feeling when you do achieve it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. It's about remembering the things that you've already achieved. Do you know what I'm saying? So when you take on a new challenge like, well, how do I surf now? It's like, well, I've done all these things. I actually believe that a large degree of success comes down to momentum. It's like I say to my team the whole time, it's like, don't be on the back foot. If you're on the back foot, you can't move. You can't move. You're up against the wall. Where are you going to go? Left or right? You need to be going forward. And so you need to have these small wins every day, to your point around flying. It's like you got to have a small win every day. Yes, you're not going to win every day. That's retarded. You got to get rid of that expectation, right? You have to lose. You have to fail also. But that doesn't mean it's the end. It's never the end. But you have to have the small wins, and they always build up to momentum. You know that saying like 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 2 steps back and 3 steps forward, or whatever. That's how it is. It's like that's just life. That's just how it is. And like I really reckon, like, also you've now validated that belief for me, is that if you don't have momentum, it is much harder to win. But when, like, your Ellen show, you know, your history, your story, and all the things you overcame, and so when you looked at a surfboard, you were like, bitch, please, I'm gonna make it rain up on this surfboard. Right?
Yeah, it was. Now that I think about it, yes.
I'm like a mirror, Jess. I just hold up your amazing reflection. But let's wrap this up. So incredibly inspiring story. And maybe the answer is almost self-evident now, but I have to ask you this question. Why do you do what you do? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
I think that knowing that there is something greater, and that we're there for a purpose for other people and ourselves. And I have a tremendous faith, and my faith has been a huge part of my life in getting up and in the tough struggles of life as well, which we all have. And just knowing that there is something greater out there. And for me, that is what gets me up in the morning, especially maybe when it's not as bright and sunny as it is usually here in Arizona. So, yeah, it's a huge part, is that faith. Who's
your rock in your life?
Wow. Well, I have to think about that, because I have a phenomenal husband who helps me. I learned so much from him as well. I have had wonderful parents in my life who have been not only telling me my whole life that you can do anything, but they're living examples that you can do anything. And just having this tremendous, my faith, my Christian faith has been a rock in my life. And I just feel like there's a lot of things that have come. There's not just one rock, because I think there's multiple sources that have helped me become who I am. And now I'm able to be that for other people as well, to help encourage them through speaking, or to be an example in everyday encounters of joy and hope. So there are a lot of factors. Thank you for that question, though.
No, it's an important one, because you cannot do it on your own. You just can't do it. Like,
you can't. Yeah.
You think you can, but I know that you can't. Like Usain Bolt, greatest talent, right, ever. He doesn't just train himself. You know, he's got a team of people around him. And that's what makes him Usain Bolt. That's what it takes, a team of people. So anybody that's achieved anything of noteworthy importance, of which you've done that on more than one occasion, is all comes down to that support structure. And I don't think we give it enough credence, if you know what I mean.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
We have to always acknowledge it. I feel very blessed. And so thank you for giving me the opportunity to acknowledge them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to shout out to anybody?
Not anyone in particular, but just hello to everyone. And come find me also on my website, which is jessicacox.com or rightfooted.com. Both will bring you there. Mm-hmm. And if you want to connect with me on social media, feel free to reach out. Yeah,
please, guys, go and do that. Jessica is certainly a shining light amongst a lot of dark out in the world right now. So Jess, thanks so much for being on the show. It's been a privilege and an honor to tell your story.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Cool. Thanks, Jess.
Bye.
Ciao.